Howdy, ESSM 406. This lecture is about what problems can be found when we look at command and control regulation. So the easiest way to regulate is for governments to tell people and or companies what to do. So in the United States, command and control regulation has been very important and effective for improving and protecting the environment. However, I want to share with you 3 potential problems for command and control regulation in environmental policy. So first, these regulations really provide no incentive for going beyond the set limits. For example, if we have a limit on emissions, then there's really no incentive to go anything below that emission, but just to go right up to the edge of that emission. There's also really no incentive to come up with a new technology that could possibly have a revolutionary effect on these emissions. Second, there's a lot of politically motivated loopholes that can be found in command and control regulation. And thirdly, these regulations often have a really limited flexibility and don't take into account the complexity of ecosystems or economic systems. So when the United States started passing comprehensive environmental laws in the late 60s and early 70s, a typical law specified how much pollution could be emitted out of a smokestack or a drain pipe for water. And these laws also imposed penalties if pollution limits were exceeded. Other laws required the installation of certain equipment, for example, on tailpipes of cars or scrubbers on smokestacks from power plants. And these were all in efforts to reduce pollution. So this use of command and control regulation has been really highly successful in protecting and cleaning up the U.S. environment. So in 1970, if you remember, the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, was created to oversee all of the environmental laws. In the same year, the Clean Air Act was enacted to address water pollution. And then 2 years later, in 1972, Congress passed and the President signed the far-reaching Clean Water Act. All of these acts were enacted to help protect our environment, and they used command and control environmental laws to enforce these regulations. And so these command and control environmental laws have been, and they've also been amended, there's been updates to them, but they've been really largely responsible for providing cleaner air and water in the United States in recent decades. But let's go into what some of the issues could be. First of all, we talked about no incentives. So like I said, it really offers no incentive to improve the quality of the environment beyond whatever the particular law states. So once that regulation has been satisfied, polluters have zero incentives to do better. So here's a really good example for you. Sulfur dioxide. Sulfur dioxide is a really bad pollutant, and it comes primarily from burning coal at power plants. The US government regulates the emissions of sulfur dioxide. Now there's 2 basic ways to decrease these emissions. First, you can change the type of coal you burn. So certain types of coal have much higher levels of sulfur dioxide than others. So when you look at coal mined from Appalachia, like West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, all of the coal coming from that region has really high concentrations of sulfur dioxide. Whereas coal coming from other areas, such as Wyoming, they have much lower levels. The second way to decrease the emissions of sulfur dioxide is by putting a device on smokestacks called scrubbers. And these scrubbers remove the sulfur dioxide after the coal's been burned. Now, you can see that there's these 2 different ways of trying to reduce the emissions of sulfur dioxide, and that there would be different ramifications on the results on the environment based on which choice these companies would make. And if you're thinking more holistically about solutions, but if your only requirement is to hit a certain number, you have less incentives to think about alternative solutions for this. Second issue, political loopholes. So there's great potential for political loopholes. Command and control regulations are written by legislators and the Environmental Protection Agency, so they're really subject to compromises in the political process. You can see that today with the appointment of an EPA director who basically wanted to destroy the agency before he worked for it. Another issue is existing companies often argue and lobby that stricter environmental standards should not apply to them, only to new firms that wish to start production. So what we actually see is in the real world, environmental laws are full of fine print, loopholes, and exceptions. You remember when we talked about the process of making policy that's used or based on science and evidence versus how policy is actually made? This is where things can get off the rails and not always align. Certain lobbyists hold a lot of power, and they can really influence policy in ways that don't necessarily protect the environment. Now, the third issue that we see with command and control regulation is inflexibility. And I would say that this might even be the most serious problem for command and control regulation. It always requires the same standard for polluters or for different systems or for different laws. And this means that it really draws no distinction between firms that would find it easy and expensive to meet all the pollution standards or to reduce pollution even further, and firms that might find it difficult and costly to meet the standard. So firms really have no reason to rethink their production methods in fundamental ways that might reduce pollution even more and at lower costs. Another important thought when we think about environmental policy is highlighted in the article you were assigned by Holling and Meffy called The Pathology of Natural Resource Management. They point out that many of our natural resource management rules are written to conform with command and control regulation. But when we think about ecosystems are really complicated, and we can't always account for all that complexity when we want to put in a regulation. Now, a class example of this in the natural resource management world is fire policy, and I know some of you are writing about this. The U.S. Fish and Forest Service used to have a policy that all fires in forests must be extinguished. Now, it turns out that forest management and fire are a lot more complicated than we understood at the time. So we made a rule that treated all of these systems the same. And now we know there are many fires that we should have allowed to burn. And by suppressing these fires, we ended up with much more dangerous fires that hurt a lot of people, burned down a lot of communities, and possibly even hurt the ecosystems that we were trying to protect. In fact, we've learned that some forests have evolved to depend on fire. So if we think about the ponderosa pine forests of the desert southwest and the longleaf pine forest in the southeast, they actually depend on fire for many of their ecosystem processes, including germination. So when critics of command and control regulation understand the goal of limiting environmental degradation, they also question whether command and control regulation is always the best way to design policy tools for accomplishing that goal. So in our next lecture, we're going to discuss a bunch of different alternative policy instruments. Thanks.